Hello, and welcome to Particle Measuring Systems webinar titled Validation of a 4-Hour Active Sampling Using BioCapt Single Use, a Real Case Study. This discussion will provide insight on active air sampling. We will be looking at a 4-hour continuous sampling using BioCapt Single Use. The presentation will begin shortly, but there are a few housekeeping items I'd like to discuss first. My name is Heather Mason, and I am an application specialist here at Particle Measuring Systems, and I'll be the moderator for today's presentation. To ask a question during the webinar, use the question tab. We'll do our best to answer your questions at the end of the webinar. If we run out of time, we will email you the answer directly. If anyone is having trouble with the audio or video, please use the raise your hand function, and I will try to address it as quickly as possible. So now I'd like to introduce our first presenter, Julia Artali. Julia will discuss our BioCapt single use, a unique solution for active air sampling in compliance with Annex 1. Julia has a degree in biology from the University of Milan with over 20 years experience in microbiology, specifically for pharmaceutical applications. Our next presenter will be Sarah Tedisco. She will follow Julia's presentation with a BioCapt single-use 4-hour sampling case study. Sarah has a scientific background in medical biotechnology and molecular medicine. She is on our advisory team and has been with PMS since December of 2020. Her role is advisory analyst, and it's focused on supporting the team to improve the sterility assurance approach and the strategy for pharmaceutical companies worldwide. So next, I'd like to go over our agenda. First, we're going to talk about BioCapt single use, the unique solution for active air sampling. Next, we'll talk about BioCapt single use and Annex 1 compliance. And then we'll move into the case study with the 4 hours of continuous sampling. And we'll go over some of the evaluations of key and non-key parameters, the validation protocol, the validation test results, and a conclusion. Now I'm going to turn this presentation over to Julia.
Good day to everybody. Before giving the floor to Sarah, who will present us a very interesting case study with BioCapt single use, let me do a brief introduction about the BioCapt single use itself. I'm sure that many of you already use for microbial air sampling the BioCapt single use, which is the combination of the impactor and the plate in one single device, so a single-use technology. This single-use technology offers a solution that eliminates the risk related to the handling of sampling, risk that we have when we use the traditional plates with the traditional stainless steel impactor. BioCapt single use can be used with both portable air sample like our MiniCat Mobile and a monitoring system such as Facility Pro. The system is ready to use, so this means that the operator has just to unpack and start to use. About the packaging, it is packed with 4 bags. This means that we have 3 units that are all together double packed, and 4 of these 3 units that we call triplet have additional 2 bags. This packaging is very useful for the transport from the warehouse to the selling point. The core feature of BioCapt single use is the elimination of error due to the handling of the plates with the stainless steel impactor and the plates itself. The system is a plug-in, plug-out, so it's really extremely easy to use and to install. Thanks to this characteristic, the BioCapt single use reduces the cost related to the investigation due to false positive, as well as the cost related to the management of the stainless steel impactor, for example, the management of autoclave. Now I leave the word to Sarah. I'm sure that each of you are very exciting about the presentation that Sarah will give to us.
Thank you, Julia, for this amazing introduction on the BioCapt single use. And as shown by Julia, we saw how this device works and the benefits of using it. But now let me show you how this device can satisfy the requirements of Annex 1. The new Annex 1, as you know, pushes to have a continuous monitoring in grade A area using two possible methods, active sampling or settle plates. And this is a great news because now we can choose between the two of them, and using a BioCapt single use allow us to satisfy the requirements of the continuous monitoring, removing the settle plates, so we can use only one method. In addition, Annex 1 recommends the using of modern methods, and so we can consider BioCap single use as a modern method because it has many advantages than classic settle plates. For example, we can consider BioCap single use as a validatable device because we can validate this kind of device, and on the contrary, it's not possible to validate the settle plates where we can just check the agar performance by grow promotion test. Other benefits, important benefits to consider is that the handling allows a lean handling, which means less false positive, reduced glove contamination agar residue, save storage space, and also we can have a easy handling with reps and isolator gloves. So keep in mind that the requirement of the guideline is to verify the performance of your method according to your process. But what does it mean? This means that it is mandatory to validate the BioCap single-use methodology in terms of time, exposure, and recipe in order to capture the contamination in your process. So this means the validation of supplier is a good starting point to use it, but it's not enough. And now let me introduce this amazing case study about a BioCap single use tested for 4 hours sampling in continuous. First of all, it is paramount to evaluate the key and non-key parameters. But what is a key parameter? The key parameter is defined as a parameter whose variation has an important impact on device use, and for this reason it must be under control during the process and during the sampling, because the changes of this parameter could impact on the final results. So, according to preliminary feasibility study, we define as key parameters the temperature, the humidity, and the aspiration flow of the pump, so the flow rate. And we saw that a high temperature and too low humidity could impact on the hydration of BioCap single use, and the aspiration flow parameter impacts on the performance of BioCap single use because impacts on the biological efficiency and on the exposure times. Talking of the airflow speed inside the filling line, this is not considered a key parameter because the change of its value hasn't any impact on the BioCap single-use performance, and in fact, during this case study, it was determined that airflow speed from inside the filling line was not a key parameter. The purpose of this validation protocol was to demonstrate the good performance of BioCap single use for our sampling in continuous and after VHP cycle in the isolator. The validation protocol included the three phases. First of all, the test A about the visual inspection performed before sampling, after sampling, and after incubation of the BioCap single-use device. And the visual inspection is important to evaluate the condition of the agar in terms of crack and shrink. Then test B about the dehydration, and this test was carried out to understand the percentage of dehydration of the agar after sampling. And at the end, the test C recovered efficiency by the growth promotion test carried out using 80cc microorganisms and environmental isolates just to understand if the stress conditions could interfere with the growth of microorganisms on the BioCapt single use. In this table, you can see the acceptance criteria that have been used to understand if the results were in compliance or not. The acceptance criteria for test A, so for visual inspection, were to assess that the agar had no cracks, no contamination before sampling, that the agar's color was yellow, and that it had a uniform distribution in terms of volume. For dehydration, on the other hand, values less than or equal to 40% have been accepted, and for recovery efficiency, values greater than or equal to 70% have been accepted. About the growth promotion test, as the table shows, 80cc microorganisms and environmental isolated microorganisms were tested on 3 different batches, and for each batch, 3 repetitions were carried out. In addition, non-stress BioCapt single use were used as control to evaluate the recovery efficiency, and after microorganisms inoculation, the BioCapt single use were incubated according to incubation protocol. So, just for your information, the recovery efficiency has been calculated dividing the number of colonies on the stressed BioCapt single use and the number of colonies on the control BioCapt single use multiplied by 100. On the other hand, the value of dehydration has been defined according to feasibility study performed by particle measuring system, and it is defined according to the initial quantity of the agar. And for the calculation of dehydration, and therefore to understand how much volume was lost after sampling, BioCapt single use were weighed before and after sampling. And so the dehydration was calculated by subtracting the weight before the sampling and the weight after the sampling divided by the weight before the sampling and multiplied by 100. And the dehydration limit is 40%. Now is the right moment to show you the results of this interesting case study. Just to have a clear evidence of the results, we decided to perform the average calculation both for recovery efficiency and for dehydration. And as the table shows, the results about the recovery efficiency have been collected according to the type of microorganisms spread on the plates, and the average has been calculated using the results for each batch. And the results are amazing because all the data are in compliance with the acceptance criteria, and so all of them are upper than 70%. About the dehydration, the average has been calculated considering the results obtained for each batch. And also in this case, the results are great. And so you can see from the slide, all of them are less than or equal to 40%. Want to satisfy your curiosity, and for this reason let me show you the real pictures of these results. And as the figure shows, the agar has no cracks and shrinks, it appears yellow, and after incubation it's possible to view the colonies grow up. Well, in this case, it's possible to observe the same results for the same microorganism from the visual inspection point of view, but for batch number 2. And also this slide shows great results about the visual inspection for the same microorganism for the batch number 3. Well, just to recap, for this case study, the results obtained for key parameters are 90 degrees for temperature, 60% for humidity, and 28 liters per minute for flow rate. As I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, the airflow speed of filling line was not considered a key parameter because it had no impact on device performance. In fact, the table shows different values about the airflow speed inside the capping machine and inside the isolator, and these values hadn't any impact on the BioCap single-use performance. Of course, keep in mind that is very important. Take under control the key parameter because they can change during the process and this is not good for the final results. So, what did we learn from this case study? We learned that after for our sampling, the agar of BioCap single use is very, very delicate. And so must remember that the agar is delicate, is thin, and is very stressed after for our sampling. For this reason, we suggest you to spread gently the microorganisms on the plates and pay attention during the blackout of BioCap single use in order to avoid the cracks of the agar. So the results about the dehydration, recovery efficiency, and visual inspection point of view, as I showed before, have been amazing, and they all had been in compliance with the acceptance criteria. Overall, this study was positive and showed that after 4 hours of continuous sampling under stress conditions, the BioCap single use remains an efficient device. It is capable of giving truthful results and guaranteeing optimal monitoring.
There were several questions during the presentation that we'll now try and answer. Julia, we'll start with you. So is the BioCap single use available only with TSA?
Oh, thank you, Ethel, for these questions. BioCap single use is available with all media used in a pharma company. So we have a TSA with neutralizer, saburo-dextrose agar with neutralizer, but there is also a specific formulation created for antibiotic producer, which include a particular enzyme, which is the lactamator, which inhibit a wide range of beta-lactamic antibiotics like penicillins, cephalosporins, penems, and so on. So let me say that we can offer to our customer a complete range of media based on their need, and so we have the solution for them.
Thank you, Julia. So I have another question coming in. Sarah, this one's for you. Why did you
Yeah.
use 3 batches and 3 repetitions per batch to validate the BioCap single use?
Okay, Yeter, thank you for the question. So we use 3 batches to have statistically significant results because 3 batches more or less can catch the 50% of the process variabilities. So that's the reason why.
Okay, great. So here's another question. Julia, I'll give this one to you. Um, how can BioCap single use be installed in a filling line?
Good question. Nice. The BioCap single use is very easy to install, let me say. So if there is already microbial impactor, is let me say just a matter to remove the stainless steel impactor and to use the BioCap single use. So it's a plug-in, plug-out solution, and in the daily use of the BioCap single use, again, is very easy. The operator has just to remove the lateral cap on the hose barb, the lid, of course, connected to the tube, start with the sampling, and after to do the opposite action and move for the incubation.
Okay, great, Julia.
Thank you.
And I see another question coming in. Sarah, would you like this one?
Yeah.
So can you explain your experience using the BioCap single use during this case study?
Oh, yes, of course. This case study was amazing, but during this test, we just have two issues caused by the handling of the device. So it was possible to understand that an incorrect handling during the plug out of the BioCap single use could cause damage on the plates and also the spread of microorganisms during the grow promotion test must be handled with care. And let me remind you that after which P cycle, after 4 hours sampling, and inside the isolator, the agar is under too much stress. So be careful.
Okay. And I have another question. I think I only have time for this last question. And Sarah, I'm going to direct this
Yeah.
to you. Is it possible to use these results from the case study for other BioCap single-use validations?
Oh, absolutely not. It is not possible because the performance qualification must be done in your environment and in your filling line. This case study can be considered a good starting point to evaluate the feasibility of a 4 hour continuous monitoring, but it's not possible to use this kind of results for other case other case
Okay,
study. Of course. Thank you.
you're welcome. So I apologize, we won't be doing any other questions. If you have questions, we will be following up with individuals directly by email. Please feel free to email Julia or Sarah directly or use our info inbox at pmeasuring.com. And thank you everyone for attending today and have a great day.
Thank you. Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Bye.